and a warm welcome to all the participants who have joined us today on for this webinar titled The Wisdom Bridge, Connecting Community and Care for Children's Well-Being. In today's interconnected world, the word community or the role of community in nurturing the well-being of children is very vital. It's very pivotal in their whole journey ahead in the future. So today, in today's webinar, we are going to explore how communities can provide support, guidance, and how they can share some wisdom with parents, and how can they help in creating, sustaining, nurturing an environment where children, they don't really, they don't merely thrive, but they are well cared for. And then they are not merely cared for, but we are able to harness the power of the collective care in raising resilient and joyful children. So, without much ado, let me introduce today's eminent speakers. Dr. Elizabeth Denley has joined us today. Thank you. So Dr. Elizabeth Denley has done ecological research sciences, and over a period of the last 40 years, she's expanded her research from just biology to include yoga, meditation, mental health, education. And she's also been actively involved in creating a lot of practical lifestyle programs, which is based on yogic psychology, yogic sciences, and also which incorporates meditation in these lifestyle programs. She's also mentored and trained a lot of heartfulness trainers. She's mentored and trained a lot of heartfulness practitioners all over the globe. And I myself am the benefactor of one of such training programs. She's one of my mentors too in the last, I think, about 10 to 15 years. And she's been a certified heartfulness trainer for the last 3 decades. Elizabeth has also coordinated the development of the Heartfulness Way School's curriculum. It's being used all over India, Australia, Fiji, Europe, North America, and she's been working on such programs since 1997. She's also the chief editor of the Heartfulness magazine, which has a presence in over 160 countries. Thank you so much for joining us today, Dr. Elizabeth. It's an honor, joy, and pleasure to have you here.
Thank you, Purnima. It's an honor for me as well, and I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you. I am going to introduce Taryn Daly, and she is no less. She's an occupational therapist in the United States and Scotland, and she has an experience of over 40 years working with children, parents, teachers, educators, and a lot of caregivers. She's working in Kanha Shantivanam, which is the world headquarters of the Heartfulness Institute, for the past 5 years as a developmental therapist at the Kanha Wellness Center. She's also the director of the Kanha Enrichment Education Program, which is called KEEPS. KEEP program has a lot of initiative, and one such initiative is something which we are going to talk about during the course of the webinar also. So the KEEP programs include Kids Blooming, which is an enrichment education for 18 months for 3-year-olds. She's also started a program called the STEAM Train, which is also based on experiential science, technology, engineering, and it also has a lot of math activities for 7 to 16-year-olds. And she has the Giraffe Club, which is a heartful communication program for 3 to 8 years old. She has the Tiger Club, neurodevelopment movements for 2 to 10-year-olds. And Taryn has worked with a lot of communities, including the Heartfulness community, for the past 40 years. And she's a firm believer that it takes a whole village to raise a child. And she's brought a lot of life, joy, and enthusiasm into the Kanha community. Sometimes I wish I could have been 3-year-old or 2-year-old or 18 months old and, been a benefactor of these KEEP programs. But yeah, so well, it's not too late, and I'll probably use this for my grandchildren. Thank you so much, Taryn, for joining us today.
Thank you very much, Purnima. I feel the same. I do these programs because it's what I would have loved as a child at that age.
Okay, so let's get on with this webinar. And my first question is for Dr. Elizabeth Denley. And, as the title of the webinar says, the role of community and care in children's well-being, I just want you to help us get started with this topic. What is the role of community in parenting as you see it to be?
Well, if you look at the history of human beings, we've always been social creatures. And initially, in the early days when humans emerged, they were very much tribes who were nomadic and wandering together. And children grew up in an environment which was communal, very, very communal. Not the least because this was necessary for survival. Because at that stage, humans were roaming the savannas, they were in jungles, there was a need for group harmony and cooperation for everybody to survive, adults as well as children. And you can imagine roaming around with a small baby, a small child. The mother couldn't have carried that baby all day, every day. It would have been a situation where the community stepped in, grandmothers, aunties, other women friends, fathers. It was generally a situation where children were brought up by the whole tribe, the whole village, as we would say now. Fast forward to many of us today living in urban environments, and we may live in individual houses or apartments, quite separate, what we call a nuclear family, not even grandparents around. Maybe in the lucky families, yes, but often families are spread all over the world now. Grandparents may be on another continent, aunts and uncles, siblings, cousins may be spread all over the world. We've gone from what was a group situation where children naturally were brought up in a community situation to situations where sometimes a child is with both parents working and in care during the day, not because the parents necessarily want to, but out of necessity because of cost of living issues, and also the fact that they're interested in their work, and work now takes us away from home, whereas in the original communities, everybody's work was in community. That's not the case now, except in exceptional situations like where Taryn and I are living at the moment, like Kanashantivanam, where there is community and people are working here, and people like Taryn are doing activities with children every day. So there's a very, very different feel when it's like that. But for most people, that would be a luxury. And so often they need daycare or they need a nanny to come in. Often families are only having one child also, which means that that child is very much alone, not with other kids a lot of the time. So things have gone from one extreme to another, really. And I think if you look at the rise of what we label now kids with as various conditions like ADHD and autism and all these things where kids are so-called struggling with behavioral issues, I think there's a correlation because our lifestyle now for children needs us to rethink how we go back to community and involve, if it's not the child's own biological grandparents, maybe other elders around in the community where people are living. But it's symptomatic of the fact that how do we engage with each other? In traditional societies, people are constantly engaging. I remember the first time I went to Greece when I was a teenager, and I was walking around villages on the island of Crete, which I'd studied in ancient history, and I loved the whole concept. And it amazed me that in the village square, all the elders would be sitting in the village square. They'd be playing chess, or they'd be drinking their ouzo, or they'd be playing bull, which is a game like bowls or whatever. But there was constant activity within that village. Same in India. If I drive down the road from here through Indian villages at 2:00 in the afternoon, elders will be sitting out under trees, chatting with each other. That sense of having space to do that in community is largely lost in a busy city environment where people are working and rushing a lot. We rush today. We rush from one activity to another. Even small children are rushing from daycare to swimming lessons to maths classes, even at the age of 3 to 5, which for me is quite insane. But anyway, this is the way we've developed our lifestyle. So you can imagine there's not much time for community building because everybody is so busy. I'm not saying that we shouldn't do a lot of the things we do, but can we rethink and find a balance with this? Because my experience as a fairly new grandmother is that small children benefit enormously from having the support in safe environments. And that's a whole nother question which we can discuss, how to create that safety for small children so that adults' behavior is always appropriate, is always loving, is always caring. But in an environment where adults are loving and caring and generous and able to give to small children, children thrive. And I'm sure Taryn can expand upon that because that's exactly what she's doing at Kanashantivanam.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. I was very intrigued when you said certain conditions today, like ADHD or autism. They can be better managed and they can be felt more supported in a very interesting community, in a very supportive and sensitive community. And extrapolating that same idea, children with different needs can also be supported well in a very inclusive community. I really like those ideas which you shared, and thank you so much. And on that same note, I would like to ask Karen, how does it help a child and the parent while parenting in a very diverse community structure, and how can this help in developing very resilient children?
So scientists like Elizabeth know that in nature, a diverse ecosystem is a strong ecosystem.
Yeah.
That organisms need each other to thrive. And in fact, it's been found that the strongest and most resilient and most productive ecosystems are the most diverse. And it's not so different for humans. We need everybody. We need all kinds of people with all different incomes, with all different viewpoints, with all different social standings. And also, as Elizabeth and you too, Purnima, were saying, we need to include our young ones or old ones who maybe think or learn differently. And I'm sorry to say that still there is a lot of stigma around children who may have ADHD or autism in many situations. So in our Kids Blooming organization, we're really trying to actively promote diversity. We accept children from all economic backgrounds, all social backgrounds, and all learning styles and all abilities. So in our program, which is still very small, it's not a big program yet, we have 2 kids with autism and 1 little boy who's 3, almost 3 and still not speaking, although he does not have autism. And we find that these kids fit very beautifully into our community. They're supported and they also each bring their own gifts. Like we have 4-year-old Kundan, who has autism, and he has been blossoming since he's been in Kids Blooming. He's speaking more and more and more, but not yet so, and beginning to interact socially more and more and more and more. He is quite an extraordinary child. He is already reading anything at age 4. And he takes his little plastic numbers and lines them up in certain ways that you can see that he's doing multiplication tables. His mom sent a recording of him doing multiplication tables. So he's quite extraordinary and he's quite loved in the group. And there's the little guy who's 3 and not yet quite speaking. He's a joy. He has this smile that lights up a room. And he's a great artist and he's very lively. He's all the time looking for ways to use his body in lively and creative ways. So these kids, they do add a lot. And I think when children grow up in a diverse environment where everybody is valued and differences are accepted, that they then themselves become more resilient. They're more accepting. They're like vaccinated against prejudice from an early age.
Mm.
They just grow up with all this as quite natural. If we had a bigger community, we would have people from different countries more than we do in Kanha. We'd have different racial groups. In Kanha, we have some of that, and we include it as much as we can in our program. So I think that that kind of sums it up for my views on diversity. I actively seek it out because I know it strengthens the community and the children in that community.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Taryn. I really like this idea that you shared about how diverse communities come together in building up resilience in children, and children with who are differently blessed, and that's really a very beautiful thing. But also I was also wondering about another thing, about how this intergenerational care, intergenerational love, wisdom can support parents, grandparents, all caregivers to work together to pass on these values, traditions, and it supports different practices from even between the different generations in a family, to reinforce the child's confidence, sense of belonging or inclusiveness, or those type of things. I would like to ask this question to Dr. Elizabeth.
Okay, so I have first-hand experience of this at the moment because I have a 22-month-old grandchild, and I see it very, very clearly. What I gave as a parent is different from what I give as a grandparent. I mean, love is there. Love is always there, and of course, love is the foundation for all of this. But as a grandparent, first of all, you're a lot wiser. You've been through a lot more life experience. You've learned a lot and hopefully have benefited and transformed yourself for the better. There's a sense of patience and ability to let a little child simply blossom. You're not as worried about discipline and about whether they're eating the right food and all that sort of thing, which of course is an important thing that parents do. Parents have to create that framework, especially once a child is old enough to start, understanding in ways about behavior and fitting in with society in whatever way is necessary, which of course we all have to do in all cultures, whether we like it or not. But as a grandparent, you're in a position more to be able to share wisdom. And it can be something as simple as taking a little child, a 3-month-old baby, out into the garden and showing them plants and getting them to smell leaves and flowers and look at the birds and touch things and get down into the sand and explore and feel confident doing this. Because this is the way we learn. We don't learn theoretically from reading in books. That's one type of learning. But if we're not actually giving children those experiences, we're restricting how their brains develop, how their ability to question and have a sense of awe develop. And this is something where grandparents have the time, the patience, and I mean, for me, it's exciting to do this with a small child because I'm learning also. I'm going back to a part of my existence that is so, so full of joy and life. And so I see that, when you have people around who can take on these roles and who can give parents a break, because I can tell you, with 3 adults looking after a small toddler, by the end of the day, we're all exhausted because the amount of energy that a small child has and needs to interact with the world is phenomenal. And so imagine a mother at home alone, husband's working, she's come home from work, she's got to cook dinner. What's she going to do with that child who's, say, 20 months, 18 months? The easiest and often the most practical thing, so she doesn't risk the child getting burnt near the stove or whatever, is to plonk the child in front of the television, in front of a mobile phone, in front of a video, so that they're in a safe space while she cooks the dinner so she can feed that child and then, bath the child, put it to bed, etc. So we use screens as babysitters all the time in modern society. And a child who gets addicted to that, because it's very addictive to the human brain, then becomes fixated on screens instead of being able to go out and explore, develop cognitive skills, coordination skills, exploring beauty and understanding beauty. So without this intergenerational wisdom, for many modern nuclear families, it's incredibly difficult. A mother, what's she going to do if she's home cooking alone after coming home from work and needing to feed her baby? She'll either buy fast food or she'll put the baby in front of the television so that she can cook. Now, how's that good for small children? And that's what we're doing today because that's our lifestyle. The minute you suddenly have elders, other kids, neighbors, all coming together, you can prevent that whole syndrome, which is not a healthy one for small children, simply by the numbers and also the wisdom. We're talking about the wisdom bridge here. I'm much better at this now at my age than I was when I was a new parent because I have more wisdom about it. And it helps. And it helps my daughter also because she's learning. And why should she have to reinvent the wheel on everything? I'm not saying that I should be imposing, but I'm there as support if needed. And that's a phenomenal thing for those families who can create it.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you so much. And when you spoke about this beautiful idea about intergenerational wisdom being the parent being present, the grandparent being present to help the parents get on with their lifestyle, and the presence of these grandparents is actually helping the parents as well as the children to have healthy lifestyles. And Daji said something very similar in the book, The Wisdom Bridge, where one of the principles he mentioned was it takes a village to raise a child. And, I also inferred from Terence Kids Blooming program that she exactly, uses this principle in this environment. And I would like Terence to share a little bit more about what she does in this program.
Okay, well, it's interesting coincidence that just a few days ago, one of our fathers commented that Kids Blooming is like an example of a whole village raising a child. This was Kundenstad. And, he's even maybe a more complex child to care for than most. And he's found so much support. We've grown close. We have, these are just little children, 18 months to 3 years. So we have a policy that parents come with the child, a parent or a close caregiver comes with the child, at least until the child is ready to separate without anxiety. Sometimes often in fact, the parents choose to keep coming even when the child can be okay without their presence. With some parents, they really need a break. Their child is okay. That's what they do then is they leave the child and they have a little break from the big job of childcare, as you both were talking about. So we've grown close. The mothers in the group will not just be with their own child. If the child is in distress, they'll go to any child. So it gets to be like the old villages where child could go to any home and be at home. I want to show you a little slideshow. Oh, I see one other thing also, that we teachers, there's 3 of us, we get to have the role a bit of elders or grandparents. Parents will come to us and they will ask us questions about the child at home, difficulties they're having, and we can discuss it with them and maybe arrive at some solutions. So there's a little bit of that intergenerational dynamic going on as well. So now I just want to show you a little slideshow about our Kids Blooming Village. I'll share my screen. I'm having trouble here getting the slideshow view up.
Just down on the orange part, Taryn. You see if you go along.
Now I've
Okay.
got it. Now I've got it. Slideshow. There we go. Okay, so here we are in our village. We spend a lot of time out in nature. And here we're having a story session with lovely Artie, who's our lead teacher and a wonderful storyteller. And you see how it is. It's like a village, an indigenous village in many ways. The moms are sitting there with their kids, enjoying the sunlight and enjoying the story. Here's some examples of how we act as a village together. Can you see this whole slide, or are the thumbnails in the way?
I
We
can
can
see
see
the
it.
slide well.
Okay. Okay, so we moved into a row house that was new and it was undeveloped and the yard was rubble and weeds. So without being asked, one of our dads volunteered to bring in a crew and help clear the backyard. So here they are, the fathers and his friend, he brought in friends also, and Artie are digging into the earth, clearing the backyard. And at the same time, the kids are here doing their little share. This is little Meenakshi, lovely. She's a little 2-year-old, and she was pulling weeds right along with everybody else. Meanwhile, little Mohan is doing his favorite activity of loading up his dump truck. Here, the kids are helping. They love to help. They're active parts of the community.
Now you play all together. No.
Okay. There we go. So the kids also chip in and become an active part of our village. They're not passive recipients. Here, the older ones are helping out the younger ones, and we see this happen. This little girl on the left, the older child is Dara, and she pretty much adopted little Meenakshi, and she would go home and tell her mother about her baby after the class. And over here, we see 2 children, the older one holding the younger one's hands, and the child in front is Kundin, our one of our children with autism, joining right in with everybody else. You know, sometimes I hear parents say that they're fearful that if children, typically developing children, are together with kids with learning differences, that they may start to copy them. We don't find that happening at all. We're just all members of one community. And this is gorgeous little Gokul, who at age 3 leads the group every morning in opening circle with the slokas. He's the leader. He chants it first, and then everyone repeats after him. So that's my little bit about the village. I'll show more later.
Wow, Taryn, that was amazing. Thank you so much for giving us a little peek, little insight into this beautiful village that you've given birth to, cultured, nurtured, enriched with the help of all these parents and these very, very, very super loving children. Thank you so much, Taryn. I would like
And
to,
it's
yeah,
also,
yeah. So on this note, I would like to slightly change gears about another aspect about community and care. You know, we have this very ideal idea about community. We have this very beautiful ideology about community rather. But, you know, I was also wondering, how can communities, or even within a single community, we give each other mental and emotional support without creating a stigma or without creating a judgment? Or how could we actually do this emotional well-being of each other with discretion? This is something which is, I mean, helping each other out comes as a very natural part, but also, you know, I would like to understand how the other person feels and how we don't try to create an element of stigma in it. I would like to ask this question to Dr. Elizabeth Denley.
This is a very big topic, Purnima, and it relates very much to heartfulness, because to get to a state where we're not judging ourselves or others, and it's just an axiom that if you're judging others, it means you're also judging yourself. You're not comfortable in your own skin. There's not self-acceptance, self-awareness even, which is the starting point, or any self-compassion. So if you're not being kind to yourself, it's very hard to be kind to others. And then we start to point fingers and judge. And if somebody has, in the modern world, we give labels, right? We give labels like ADHD or autistic, or even with so-called normal people, this person is flighty, or this person is, depressive or whatever. If, when we're doing this, we're not looking for the genius in each person. One of the things I learned from my Heartfulness Guide when I first started is that anyone who's working with children, or even other adults, but especially with children, like teachers or caregivers, in a state of love, what do? We look for that person's genius, a small child's genius. If they're not speaking, their genius may be in other ways, in silence, or in being able to draw beautifully, or, as Taryn said, smile and make everyone else happy. I mean, that's a huge gift to give a community, right? A little child who smiles and brings joy and happiness to everybody. So when we're looking at the genius in people, when we're not looking to label and with prejudice at looking at people's faults, a very, very different community emerges. A community emerges that is safe, because people are not having, fingers pointed at them in any way. The minute you create a safe environment, a safe community where people can be themselves, and we all have struggles, right? There's not one human being on this planet that doesn't struggle in some way or another. If we have to deal with that struggle on our own, it's very difficult. We feel isolated with our challenges, isolated with our problems. But the minute we can create a safe community where, if I have any problem I'm dealing with, I can go to Taryn, or I can go to you, Purnima, and say, I'm struggling with this. Do you have any ideas to help me? Do you have any support networks to help me? Then life changes, because none of us are perfect. We're all imperfect. We all have issues. We all have karma to deal with that we're struggling to solve, to strengthen ourselves, to become better people. We have our tendencies, we have our habits that we've learned from our family, from our culture, etc. That's the diversity that Taryn was talking about earlier. None of us are the same, nor should we be. I mean, imagine a garden of flowers that was all the same flower, that was all the same height, that was all the same everything. I mean, that's not how gardeners work. That's not how composers of music work. They bring differences together to create texture, to create layers, to create diversity, which is beauty. And it's the same in any human community. Everyone struggles sometimes. I was reading the most fantastic article the other day by a child doctor and psychologist who works with pre and perinatal situations. And she says even the birth process itself, even the best birth, still contains some trauma for both mother and baby. So how do you support this? How do you support a woman going through menopause, through the trauma of that change in life? How do you support young parents who are dealing with their first baby and sleepless nights and all that sort of thing? We all need support. And for me, the way that I've seen this happen is through an inner process. I practice heartfulness, so that's my inner process. But what does it do for me? It allows me to look within through meditation, through reflection, through self-awareness practices like writing a journal, and to become comfortable with my inner universe. I don't push it away. I don't repress negative, so-called negative emotions. I don't see them as negative anymore. If I feel angry, it's because something needs to change. The anger is come up in my system so that I have the energy to look at that and to grow with it and say, how do I need to change here? What needs to happen so things can be done differently? If I feel sad, it's telling me something. If I feel fear, it's telling me that caution is required here. If I feel panic, which often goes with fear or our anger or whatever, it's a survival instinctual reaction, something that's there from our animalistic past. So it's telling me, be careful, there's a need for caution here. There are so many ways that you start to become self-aware and look at yourself when you do a meditative practice. And for me, that's instrumental in creating a safe environment, because once I'm comfortable with that in myself, and others are too, we all start to accept these differences far more easily. They're just part of the human condition. None of us is better than any other in that way. And in fact, somebody who may not appear to be successful in our modern urban world with, who doesn't have a high-powered career, may be an expert in these things and may have a lot to offer community. And often that's something that you can find in elders, because they're past that stage of having to, prove themselves or, save money for their kids' education and all that sort of thing. And they're in a state where people can come and learn just by being with them, not even necessarily talking. So I think creating this safety through creating generosity in your own heart, creating an awareness of mastering your emotions so that you learn to work with them, and then you can help others do that. And I've found that in the Heartfulness community. I think there are probably many other communities around the world who are doing similar things. But without that spiritual dimension, without awareness of the soul and the soul's role in connecting us with the oneness of all of us, we become isolated islands. We don't have that ability to move past the diversity and start to feel safe with each other. So I think having a spiritual perspective brings a great gift to any community, because with the soul's involvement, we are all one and unity can happen.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you so much. That was a great starting point for a self-reflection journey in itself. And I've indeed, when you spoke about being in touch with elders across different generation, and just being in their presence, being a form of healing, it's something I suddenly realized that I've experienced it myself. For instance, with certain mentors, certain heartfulness trainers. Sometimes I don't have to explain myself a whole lot of stuff, but just being in their presence for half an hour or an hour and just, talking about the mundane things, or just having a cup of tea or coffee, or just having a meditation session. So many of these different things I've experienced myself personally. And when you were, just talking about it, it was like it was like an epiphany moment to me about how, emotional mental health is, the role of community in giving this care and support and nurture for parents, caregivers, and even children is really that presence, that beautiful, unjudgmental, that beautiful, compassionate presence of an elder. It's so beautiful. Thank you so much. And I don't want to go on and on about it. It's just an experience, and I just wish for all the participants to have this beautiful experience. Thank you. And on that note, Terran, I would also like to ask a different kind of question to you about this unique Kids Blooming program. How would you see this balance between freedom and boundary in your program?
It's a very good question. And we try to provide both a lot of freedom and also clear, kind boundaries. So I have another little slideshow where I can show you about some of the things we offer and how we give the children freedom. And then I would like to address that very important question that you both brought up about how we help children deal with their strong emotions. These are toddlers. Toddlers have huge emotions. So I'll talk a little bit about that after sharing about some of the ways that we give freedom. So I'm going to attempt to screen share again. Okay, now you've got you still don't have the slideshow view up.
So do play from current slide, Taryn, towards the left, second from the left.
Ah, play from current slide. Thank you, Elizabeth. Okay, so we do provide kids with a lot of freedom. We give them a rich environment, and then we let them freely explore and learn within that environment. We don't give much instruction. We believe in child-directed learning. We believe that these children have a huge drive inside them for learning. And mainly all we have to do is give them this good environment and let them explore within it. So we have toys, learning toys, we have books, we have a costume corner, we have sensory materials, and here you see examples of kids who are just on their own, playing and learning. This little guy in the middle, it took him a while to figure out, and he would get very, very frustrated when he couldn't get his blocks to stack up. So when kids get too frustrated, we'll come in and give them just enough help, just enough that they can then take the next step on their own. Because we find when the children accomplish on their own, they have a huge sense of joy and ownership and confidence that they have done it. There's not someone has done it for them or told them exactly what to do. Here's a little girl who has completed this whole chain of links. And this is an example. I'm going to show you just a very brief little video clip of her attempting and not succeeding at getting a couple of links in, and how easy she is with it. She deals with it. So you see how creative and resilient she is. She keeps trying. She's developed a lot of persistence because we've let her do this on her own without immediately rescuing when something is hard for her. So she has already done this whole chain, and I'm sure she will find them the right links to put in to finish her chain there. We have a dress-up corner where kids can just go and take out what they want to take out and put it on, and we have a big mirror beside the dress-up so that they can look at themselves in their splendor. I think someone might have helped little Garima there with her sari, but the other kids did that all by themselves. We have a lot of sensory play. We do a lot of sensory play. Here's a great quote by the very famous Swiss child developmental psychologist Jean Piaget, who says that it's through sensory play that children digest new knowledge and store it for later use. And in fact, he goes farther to say sensory play is key to a child's brain development. And we put a lot of focus on these kids' brain development. We do a lot of activities that are fun and are also specifically meant to help their brains develop connectivity and grow. So here we have the water play. The kids adore water play. And so on a nice warm day, we'll go out. At first, we were trying to get them to just play with their hands, but they wouldn't have it. They climbed right in, clothes and all. And moms always bring a change of clothes, so it's okay. They can do that. And here we have Garima with her red hands. She's been playing in cloud dough. And we have little Garvit, who's having his first experience in a Rajma bin, where he sits in the bin and plays. I'll show you. And he has a surprise. What's that? A shell buried in the beans. So little surprises come up too. And then we have artwork. You see this little guy is so involved on the left. He's so engrossed in moving his beautiful golden brown paint around on the page. He's not interested in trying to represent something. He's interested in the paint and the texture and the color and the feeling that the paint has going across the page. And you see him being absolutely delighted here. When we would talk to him about his work, we wouldn't say, "Oh, what is that?" We would say, "Oh, look at that wonderful golden brown color you made," because he's mixed that color himself. And look at the way you swished it across the page there. We would say things like that. And then on the right, you see little Meenakshi, who's so, you can see her tenderness as she holds the little bird nest that she's made. And she's so pleased with it. She's done that. And here is just a scene of pure and utter joy. Again, in nature, blowing bubbles. And this is what we find happens when they do have this balance of freedom and boundary. So I'll stop the share and then talk a little bit about the boundary. I don't have any pictures. I wish I did. I wish I had pictures of kids grabbing toys from one another or having a tantrum or being really, really angry and hitting and kicking. I wish I did, but it's not what people tend to take pictures of, so I don't right now. We have rules. We don't announce them as rules. It's just things that we enforce, like in the grain bins. They have to keep the grain in the bin. So if they start throwing it out, we say, "Grain in bin, come help clean up, put it back." So that we get them, and now they're pretty much all doing that. They're keeping the grain in the bin, unless they're angry, in which case they might kick a bunch of grain out of the bin, in which case we would take them out of the bin to a quiet place and have them become engaged in something else. If one child hits another or tries to hit another, we try to catch before it occurs. Sometimes you don't. We'll take their hands gently and say, "I'm not going to let you hit. I'm going to help you stay peaceful and safe." And then they stop, almost always. If a child has a big tantrum, it's okay. We don't try to stop them. We accept it. We accept the tantrum. We will probably at some point, because it can be difficult for the kids that are still in the room, although it's not so much. You'd be surprised how much the other kids accept one child having a big, vigorous cry over on the side. But often we'll take them outside to a quiet place and help them walk around a little bit until they become calm and then come back in. But we don't tell them stop crying or don't feel that. You know, they feel that. They feel it. How can we tell them don't feel it? They do feel it. And sometimes they just have to cry it out. It's like there's a tension inside the body, and the crying actually releases the tension out of the body. It's a fact that tears contain cortisol, which is a stress hormone. So when people cry, we all know a good cry feels great. When people cry, they're releasing stress hormones out of their body. So we let them have their cry. If one child grabs something from another, again, we stop them. We'll take their hand and we'll instruct them. I'm going to see if you can see my body language here. To say, "May I have?" And they're learning this. Even the ones that can't speak yet, they put their hands out. And then the other child that has the thing they want can say yes or no or later. And you can tell, even if they can't speak, you can tell if it's a yes, they'll give it to them. Very often when a child says, "May I have?" the other will give it to them. If they don't, if they go like this, then it's a no. So when it's a no, we help the other child find something else to become engaged in. And they're really, really getting this. Even the little tiny ones, they're really getting it. It kind of amazes and delights me. So we do feel that boundaries are very necessary and very helpful to the children. Without them, they don't know where they are, they're lost. With them, they feel secure, they feel held. They know that there's a parent, there's an adult there helping them and guiding them and making them safe and making the community safe. So we hope that through the freedom, they gain creativity and joy and exuberance and independence and confidence. And through the boundaries, they gain security and safety and awareness of themselves and others. So that's how we balance it at Kids Blooming.
Thank you so much, Darren. Thank you so much for all those beautiful imageries, videos and pictures. And I really am very, very inspired. As we come to a close of this webinar, I would like to ask one final question about the future of parenting in a community. Like today, there are so many disruptors in the world. There are technological disruptors, environmental disruptors, societal disruptors as well. And also the future is not so smooth flowing as it used to be in the past. It's so drastically changing. And how do you see the future of parenting in a community? I would like to direct this to Dr. Elizabeth.
So I think we have to be very creative here, because we have from one extreme to the other. We still have villages in parts of the world where the whole village raises the child, literally. We also have situations, especially in our urban environments, where families, nuclear families, can be very isolated with very little support. So I think it's happening anyway. I think humans are social creatures and we don't like to do these things alone because it's not natural for us to do it alone. So take a situation like Kana. Taryn and others have developed these activities and these groups to fulfill a need. I think the future is in maybe going beyond our biological families where needed to create human communities where like-minded people get together. Generally, we want this to be in safety for the children, which means that parents have to be responsible, have to have values and attitudes that are conducive to growth in children. How does this happen? How do we develop loving, caring communities? I think we all want to do that. There's no question that everybody sees this as an ideal, but it doesn't always happen. There are families that are not safe. There are communities that are not safe for kids. And it's one of the reasons why, as I mentioned before, having practices that help adults to evolve and grow and develop their heart qualities, generosity of heart, compassion, kindness, things like patience. When adults are rushing and are doing 10 million things at once, multitasking, they don't always have patience for children. And children require patience when they're learning. I still do. I'm not a person who can go to something and then process straight away and respond straight away. I need time. I need time to sit with something, to let it absorb into me, to mull over it maybe, or to let it express in different ways before I will even give an opinion on something, because it's the way I learn, it's the way I process. Children can be the same. Create space is an important thing, I think. If all of us are able to create space, create even small pockets of time in our day where a parent who may be very, very busy sees it as a priority, even puts it in their calendar, that from 6 to 6:30 this evening is my time with Johnny or Arun or Meenakshi. You know, if you've got two kids, you'll create different spaces and time together with them both, but put it in your calendar so it's part of your busy schedule. And I guarantee you the adults, the parents will benefit at least as much as the kids from this time. This creating a space which is your whole attention is there. You turn this off or you put it in the other side of the house. You don't have messages coming in that are totally distracting you from your kids. I see parents a lot everywhere, including in beautiful communities like this. The child is running around and the mother or the father is on their mobile phone. Their attention is directed to the phone. The child is not engaging with the mother. I mean, this is a ridiculous situation because that little child will grow up so fast, you will have lost that time. You will have lost that beautiful connection that you can have in those special moments. So it's just a little thing, but I think if everybody did that every day, our world would change. Our children, you know, one of the other things that this Christiana Dykman said is she said, babies are royalty. We have to treat them as royalty. And I love that statement because she's telling us that this is our gift, this is our future, this is our precious new life that is not yet tainted by all the struggles and challenges and headaches and everything that we face. This is really an expression of joy, and we benefit just as much as the child does. So create space, create special times, put it in your calendar if you're so busy, because otherwise it won't be a priority. They are our priority. And communicating amongst each other, creating that safe space, Purnima, for emotional support, for lack of judgment, is critical for humanity to survive. If we don't do it, we'll keep going down the same spiral that we are at the moment. Climate change and other things, yes, they're important, but this is more important. Becoming humane, and especially with our children.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That last sentence, becoming or being humane with our own children, is most important. I think we'll conclude the webinar on that beautiful note. Thanks to both of you. Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you, Taryn. And I thank all the participants for joining us today. You're welcome to write to us on the wellness email ID. And if you have any more questions, both Elizabeth and Taryn would answer you directly. Thank you so much to all of you.
Thank you, everyone.